6:30. The town of Smithers acknowledges the Gitumden clan and the Wet'suwet'en people on whose unceded traditional territory we live, work, and play. And the public is notified that the meeting is being recorded and webcast, and a notice of which is placed on the bulletin board outside these chambers. Council, you've got an agenda, including a supplemental, numbers 19.1 and 19.2. And if I could have a motion to approve the agenda, please. Councillor Buchanan, Councillor Ray, all in favor? Any opposed? And that's carried unanimously. So first up on the agenda, we have a delegation, and perhaps if there's no opposition, I'm just going to bring forward 19.1, which is the presentation that was shared with us and is the presentation that we're going to be hearing about right now. We have people from BC Housing joining us virtually, so welcome. And I'm going to turn the floor over to you. And just so you know, because you can't see us, I don't think you get a full view of the chambers. We do have a few people in the gallery, although not, it's not a big crowd, but there are a few people in the gallery, just so that you're aware. Okay, and with that, welcome. I see Samuel and Kirsten, welcome. Happy New Year to you both, and I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you all. I am going to share my screen, so fingers crossed this all works. Okay. So now.
Yeah.
Do you see my BC Housing Alfred Street presentation?
We do, we've got it.
Great. Okay, one success of the new year so far. So hello, everybody. My name is Kirsten Bailey. I'm joined by my colleague Samuel Hogg. We both work in development in Northern BC, and we're so happy to join you tonight. Today, we're here to talk about a proposed rezoning of the Alfred Street properties, and I would like to thank you for having us both. Before I get started, I really would like to acknowledge that BC Housing does its work on the homelands of thousands of Indigenous peoples and nations across BC. And the town of Smithers is located on the unceded and traditional territories of the Wet'suwet'en peoples and the traditional keepers of the land. And we'd like to thank them for letting us live, play, learn, and grow on these lands. The purpose of this presentation and why Sam and I are here tonight is really to request a first and second reading for 3879, 3887, 3895 Albert Avenue. We would like to request a rezoning from a C1A to a CD1 to allow us to build 40 units of new purpose-built supportive housing on the site. What I'd like to cover off tonight is a little bit about talking about housing and homelessness in Smithers, Goodacre Place, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, BC Housing's Supportive Housing Fund, some of the economic and social benefits of supportive housing, and our current approach with Alfred Street, and obviously open it up to discussion and questions at the end. I think many of you are familiar with the housing ecosystem, the real true need for a variety of affordable rental supportive housing options right across the continuum, providing a variety of built forms, affordability in order to generate complete communities. Tonight, we're talking on my left-hand side is really addressing homelessness and the provision of supportive housing. But I'd like to note that BC Housing, with our nonprofit partners in working on the provision of affordable housing right across this continuum, and it's in working to complete housing, a variety of different housing options in Smithers. So in terms of how our supportive housing, we hope to align with Smithers housing and homelessness policies is really looking to the official community plan The residential objectives of Smithers' official community plan is to provide a diverse range of rental and market housing to improve housing and housing affordability throughout Smithers. In terms of housing, Policy 4 speaks to support proposals for a wide range of supportive housing, including the co-location of on-site supports. Policy 10, support nonprofit, educational institutions, and senior levels of government to create new housing developments in Smithers. And in terms of housing affordability and availability, Policy 6 of the OCP speaks to support the location of supportive and transitional housing within town. BC Housing's objective is to support Smithers OCP and support the manifestation and delivery of these policy objectives. In terms of homelessness in Smithers, in 2023, 57 people were identified as experiencing homelessness, and this is a significant increase from 2021. This is a 73% increase, and many of our communities in BC are seeing this type of increase, which quite honestly, I think we all find a bit shocking. 69% of the Smithers individuals identified as unhoused are male, 31% identify as female in Smithers. Of Smithers' homeless population, 83% identify as an Indigenous, and most of our Indigenous homeless identify as experiencing generational trauma as a result of the residential school system. 92% of respondents in Smithers have been in Smithers for more than 1 year, and 18% of those surveyed identified as seniors. So Smithers is experiencing a vulnerable, unhoused population living in Smithers. I wanted to note that BC Housing fully recognizes the need for winter shelter options in Smithers. We are exploring renting hotel or motel rooms, but I wanted to note that is a separate process. Tonight, we are looking at just a permanent supportive housing project, and the timing will not align to provide temporary winter shelter on the Alfred Street property, but we continue to look for emergency winter response options within Smithers. I wanted to talk a little bit about Goodacre Place. I expect most people are familiar with this project. It's very close to City Hall. It provides 22 units of supportive housing. The capital cost was $6.5 million. The ongoing operating cost is $765,000 annually. It is operated by the Smithers Community Services Association, and it opened in 2019. I also think it's a pretty nice looking building. The Goodacre Place at Smithers is very similar to what we're proposing here. There would be amenity space for the residents seen in these pictures with couches. There would be a commercial kitchen provided to provide food to the residents. These are some images of Goodacre Place in Smithers. We would also be looking at providing some outdoor community space for growing community gardens and food, and also providing space for residents to celebrate cultural and significant events like Christmas. That is really what our supportive housing programs aim to provide, is space for residents to have a community and a place to gather. In terms of how BC Housing and the town of Smithers worked together to deliver Goodacre Place, the town of Smithers had a very significant financial contribution. The town donated the land, valued at approximately $150,000, paid for a portion of the remediation costs, up to $250,000, and provided an appropriately zoned site, so no rezoning was needed. BC Housing in return leased the land at a nominal rate, covered all capital costs and ongoing operating costs, and this was delivered through our Rapid Response to Homelessness program. Currently, BC Housing, our funding program is referred to as the Supportive Housing Fund. Under this program, BC Housing carries really the financial costs associated with the supportive housing. BC Housing covers the capital costs to purchase the land and build the homes. BC Housing provides the ongoing operating costs, which fund staffing, meals, building operations, and maintenance. Now, while BC Housing provides the capital behind the project, we cannot deliver these projects without local municipalities, health authorities, First Nations, Indigenous service providers, and local nonprofit operators are a key part of the success and delivery of our supportive housing. Some of the economic benefits and why we bother doing this supportive housing is really some of the social and economic benefits and how it helps to create an inclusive community. On average, people experiencing homelessness with mental health and addictions spend approximately $55,000 in healthcare services. This is reduced dramatically when they are housed in supportive housing facilities, and that drops to $3,700. So we're seeing a reduction of the demand on our healthcare services. In addition, supportive housing residents are 64% less likely to use ambulance services, and their average hospital stay for supportive housing residents is 50% less than other shelter clients. So some of the economic and social benefits of supportive housing benefit the broader community as a whole. In terms of what BC Housing is looking at for Alfred Street, the address is 3879, 3887, 3895 Alfred Avenue. BC Housing is requesting a rezoning and consolidation of the 3 lots from C1A to CD1. Goodacre Place is under a CD1 zone. We are proposing to build up to 40 units of supportive housing in a 3-story purpose-built supportive housing building. We will follow setbacks, height and density, and parking requirements will match the CD1 zone. What is different about why we need to go through a rezoning process in this example is that BC Housing has a contract of purchase and sale for these properties, but we have not closed on these properties. We cannot purchase these properties if they do not permit permanent supportive housing on them. We're using our supportive housing dollars and we need the land to be zoned appropriately. So let it be known, BC Housing has not closed on the purchase of these properties, and we cannot do that until a rezoning is approved by the town of Smithers. If a rezoning is approved, once we have that approval, we will engage a development consultant and a design team, and we will develop a project, a site plan, images of what the building will look like and sit on the site, and we will follow, submit a development permit application and follow Town of Smithers mountain theme design guidelines and follow the town's approach and vision for the site. This is the site. There's 3 lots. 2 of them are single family dwellings, and then there's a commercial lot on the corner. In terms of what our anticipated timeline is, right now we're at January 9th. We're looking at first and second reading. February 1st, BC Housing will host an online community dialogue session. This gives community residents a chance to join on their computer to find out and talk to us a little bit about what we're proposing for the site. On February 5th, Sam and I will be in person in Smithers for community dialogue session on this proposed rezoning. February 13th, we're hoping for a public hearing and third reading, with fourth reading following in March. If the rezoning goes successfully, BC Housing will procure a design development team, and we will submit a DP development permit application sometime in 2024. It usually takes about a year for design development and the review process, and then we would hope to be under construction in 2025 with anticipated about 1 year of construction. These are all estimates at this time, but I want it to be clear that in order to build a purpose-built building that matches and fits in with the town of Smithers, we need a little bit of design time and construction time. So this is not immediate. It would be looking at coming on stream about 2026. That's really all for me. I turn it over to council, to the community for questions or discussion as you see fit. Thank you.
Thanks, Kirsten. Appreciate the time and the presentation. So I'll just look to the table to see if there's questions. And first up is Councillor Sam Raven.
Good evening. I don't have any questions. I found your presentation quite wholesome. I just wanted to say thank you for taking the time and coming back with this so quickly. I know that there was another proposal that didn't go through and you guys are able to pivot. And I think it also really shows that there was some listening happening at those engagement sessions where it's now purpose-built, the location is different. So I just really wanted to say that I appreciated the time and effort on this and that you were listening.
Thanks, Councillor Raven. Anyone else? Councillor Raven.
Hi, I just wanted to echo what Councillor Raven said, but I did have a question, and it's not pertinent tonight, but it may be asked by the community, and that's just if this goes ahead, the rezoning goes in, is there any planned public consultation during the design phase?
So to answer that question, the rezoning we will do public consultation through the rezoning process. My understanding of your development permit process, if there is no variances, we would follow your development permit process and come back to council on the design of the proposed design.
Thank you.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Worship. So I just want to say it's great to see you both again. And thank you so much for coming back to our community. I was really impressed with how you and the entire team were able to handle that last public engagement session. So please pass that along. I'm actually really thrilled to see that you've addressed some of the public comments through not only the actual location, but the size. One of the follow-up questions I have is recognizing it was a separate consultation process because it was a separate area. Can you comment at all regarding a summary from the last public engagement session? And if you have sort of any responses that we can share, or will you be sharing with the community? For example, one of the comments, significant comments that I've heard from many people in the community is the labor shortages. So who will actually be working in these facilities? And yeah, thank you so much.
So I agree. I think we all learned a lot from the Capri. I didn't talk about it in the presentation because I wanted us to be pointed forward. But yes, we did learn a lot from the Capri and the public open house and how it was structured and managed and all that sort of stuff. So we are trying to do it differently and provide Smithers with something we hope meets your community needs and your policy objectives. In terms of an operator, I think that is a key piece of it. One of our struggles, and I'll be very honest, is because we don't own the site yet, we cannot go out for a request for proposals for an operator yet because we don't own the site. What we have done is we have received a great deal of interest from local nonprofit operators to operate this site. I cannot say their names because nothing's official, but we do have interest from local nonprofit operators to operate a permanent supportive housing. Operators generally like operating a purpose-built supportive housing because it is designed for local residents' needs. They can participate in some of the design decisions that happen along the way. So we do have interest, and I'm confident we can provide a local nonprofit operator who has experience operating this type of building in the Smithers community. I just can't publicly say names at this time because we haven't gone through that procurement process.
Thank you, Kirsten, much appreciated.
I'm not seeing any other hands right now. So I'm just going to echo thank you. I think I said it before, so I won't belabor the point. Appreciate the energy and the effort that you and others have put into this, and acknowledge town staff as well, who have been working with you to try to get us to this point. So thanks to everyone. And this is the discussion then on first and second reading is under item 16.1 on tonight's agenda. So I'm just doing one final scan for hands. Do you have something else, Councillor Patterson? Okay, Councillor Patterson is waving. She's being very friendly to you folks. I think she's starting to wave. So I think if you want to stay on, you're welcome to, and I appreciate this is your evening time. So we can report back through staff tomorrow following the discussion tonight on first and second reading. So thanks for your time, your enthusiasm, and the effort that you've put in to getting us to this point tonight.
Thank you all. I think Sam and I will bid you farewell, and we'll be up in Smithers at the beginning of February, and they'll come say hello.
Thanks so much.
Actually, I'm sorry, Kristen, I did think of one thing just before you go. So once we're through this, depending on the outcome of first and second reading, more detail on the times and locations for those public consults will be shared by you, and then they can be echoed through our opportunities for communications. Is that correct?
Absolutely. If we advance, we would appreciate as much support in letting people know what is being proposed.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Okay, so where we're at now is the public comment period. So if there is anyone in the gallery that would like to speak to something that is on the agenda, I invite you to come to the delegation table. And if you can state your name and address. Oh, sorry, we're gonna take a break. I forgot we're having an issue. My apologies to those who wanted to speak. We'll just get you to hang tough for a second. We're going to recess 5 minutes. We're just having a technical issue, so we're gonna address that. So everyone just relax and we'll regroup as soon as we can. call ourselves back to order. It is 6:56. So we were just at the public comment period. I'll reiterate, so you have 3 minutes to speak to an item that's on the agenda. I'll invite you to come to the delegation table. I went through earlier so that you know how to activate the mic, and please just say your name and address for the record, and I will just invite you forward.
Okay, this is nerve-wracking, but I do my best. So my name is Pedro Cost. I am the manager of the English Language and Multicultural Services program at Smithers Community Services. And I'm here today to ask the town of Smithers for their support in establishing a local immigration partnership, a LIP, in our community. Before the holidays, we sent a request for a letter of support with more information about LIPs to the town. If our application for a LIP is successful, it would increase our town's capacity to run a community planning table that brings together stakeholders from various sectors, businesses, faith groups, medical, education, government, etc., for discussion, for strategic planning, for research, and for information and education. The active involvement in the town council in the LIP is not just vital for the success of our funding application, but it is even more crucial for the success of the LIP itself, for the continuity of successful newcomer integration into our community. Therefore, I'm here today to underline the importance of an active membership of the town council in a potential LIP. We all probably noticed that our community has become a lot more diverse in recent years. The number of newcomers trying to make Smithers their home has dramatically risen. When I started with the Elms program in 2010, we had around 20 newcomers accessing settlement services per year. In the current fiscal year, since April 2023, we have worked with almost 250 individuals with temporary foreign workers and international students being the two fastest growing newcomer groups in Smithers nowadays. Newcomers are amazing, and it's my privilege to work with them. They not only enrich our community with diverse cultures we can experience in form of food and holiday celebrations, they also play a crucial role in supporting our local economy. Without the temporary workforce, many local businesses would struggle to keep their doors open. However, newcomers also face many challenges, competing with the rest of the community for limited housing, childcare, medical resources, to name a few sectors. We have reached a critical number of newcomers in Smithers to include them and their interests in the more proactive strategic planning of our town's future. A single agency like ours providing client-centered direct services isn't any longer enough to ensure successful newcomer integration and retention, while fostering the welcoming spirit Smithers still has. It requires the collective effort of the entire community. So I'm here today to emphasize the significance of an active town council membership in a potential LIP. We believe that by working together, we can create an even more inclusive, supportive, and thriving community for both newcomers and longtime residents alike. Thank you.
Thanks, Pedro.
You're welcome.
And you know already, but this will come up for discussion under item 14.5. You're welcome to stay and join the meeting, or if you don't want to hang up with us, you won't be in. And I think Mr. Overman, you wanted to speak as well.
Ingo Overman Smithers, BC. I hope that what I'm gonna talk about is gonna prove useful to the town of Smithers down the road. I am speaking specifically to item 5 on the agenda. Also 14.2 and 14.3. Since demolition took place on the property next door to us, I've done a great deal of reading on contaminants that are in older houses. And my guesstimate is that as far as lead, which is a contaminant in a lot of paints, older paints, my guesstimate is that probably 80% of the houses in Smithers have got that contaminant in them. And it's a concern for the residents, and it's certainly a concern if we end up doing demolition. Asbestos, I don't think is as significant. I'm guessing 40–50% possibly in our existing structures in town. But it's still an issue. The proposal that is before the town in regard to the 3 properties just down the street on Alfred Avenue is going to involve demolition, and the progress on 1290 King Street and another place in town, and the address escapes me, but those properties have got stop work orders on them right now because of failure to file a hazardous materials survey. And I think the right solution is for the town to enact a bylaw which will require that the hazardous materials survey be completed before a demolition permit is issued by the town. That puts us in the driver's seat. I think that's a good path forward for the future. Secondly, I would like to talk about this lovely tool that I came across on the internet, and it's called an X-ray fluorescence spectrometer or analyzer. It can be in a lab or it can be a handheld portable. If you remember comic books, they had X-ray guns in there for the future. And the idea behind a handheld spectrometer is that you calibrate it for the contaminant that you're trying to identify. You point the gun at the surface that you're trying to analyze, and it will tell you whether it has that contaminant in it. I have no idea whether the town of Smithers has that kind of an equipment in its arsenal right now. They're not cheap, about $25,000 to $30,000. But I think it's a really, really good investment for the town in the future. Because not only will the town be able to use it before they issue a demolition permit, but the town will also be able to contract out to homeowners so that they can have their place analyzed for contaminants, for no matter what purpose, whether it's rehab, to refurbish something.
I think I'll just advise you of the time.
Fine. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So I would encourage the town to investigate the idea of having one of those XRF, it's X-ray fluorescence spectrometer. I'd encourage the town to look into investing in one of those. I think it will pay us massive dividends down the road, be very, very useful for the betterment and safety of the town.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Alrighty, we have no public hearing tonight and we're at the minutes, so we're at 8:1 and the minutes from December 12th for approval. Councilor Buchanan, Councilor Leonard, any errors or omissions? All in favor? Any opposed? And that's carried. And we're at section 9, and there is a report under 9.1. Under items to be released from the public. And that is just for information, and I believe there is one other. Mr. Cole, no? Okay, there isn't yet. So, and there's no action to be taken on these, so just for information. Okay. Alrighty. Oh, actually, I can just refer to those, so for the people in the gallery, it's just letting people know the appointments to the Advisory Planning Commission. So, we'll welcome new members to the committee. Always great to have volunteers helping us, with the public review of developments that are happening within the community. And council reports, first up, Councilor Buchanan.
Thank you, Mayor Avril. Has not been too busy a time since our December 12th full council meeting, but I did, along with Councilor Raven, attend the Chamber of Commerce Christmas party on December 15th. Very enjoyable event, lots of fun. But I also had opportunity to talk to a number of business owners, and I was reminded too that there's a significant number of businesses in this community that are facing pretty significant financial challenges, and I just thought I would highlight that and make us aware of that fact. It was a bit eye-opening to talk to a few business owners. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor Buchanan. Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mayor. Not much to report as well. This is my first real meeting back for a while. I was under the weather for about a month. So it's good to be here. Just you can see the attached library report. Just the things that Wendy and the crew are doing there, and just a good basically flew up meeting at the end of or middle of December at the library. Yeah, so just you can look at the report, and there's not much for me to report besides that. Thank you.
Thanks. We're glad you're back. Councilor Leonard. Meeting? Nothing to report. Thanks. Thank you, Councilor Thompson.
Nothing from me, Rochelle.
Thank you, Councilor Raven.
So as Councilor Beekman mentioned, we did the chamber event, which was again eye-opening, and also handing out Christmas cards to business owners, which was a really good opportunity to take some time and just connect one-on-one. Hearing about the challenges facing our local economy, our local businesses, so staffing, childcare, it's just incredible rising costs, supply chain issues. So yeah, it's always good to just have the opportunity to touch base. I attended the community session for childcare last Saturday at the old church. I was able to connect with quite a few residents there, some of the youngest residents there. It was fantastic. I believe the youngest I got to meet was 7 weeks old, so that was really fun. And then on the art gallery front, they are starting up their fantastic community exhibition, and the theme this year is Fabulous Forests and Marvelous Mushrooms. So they're welcoming everybody from the community, all ages, experience levels, and all types of arts or crafts to contribute. And the theme was chosen to collaborate with the BC Museum because they're bringing in a touring exhibition from the Royal BC Museum called BC's Marvelous Mushrooms. So if you're interested in contributing your art, you can get a hold of Nicole at the art gallery, and make sure you stop by January 30th to February 24th to check it all out.
Thanks, Councilor Raven. Councilor Ray.
Nothing to report, thank you.
Thanks, Councilor Ray. My report is there. The only thing to add is we are coming along with NCLGA planning, and we have another meeting tomorrow. With the conference planning, I guess that's a key word, it's the conference planning. And there is the strategic priorities, that is really just an information piece. If there's comments or questions that council have, that's really for us in total. Someone asked that we have this as an ongoing item, so it's really just there for information. And the only other thing I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge is that the community lost an elder that has deeply affected many people in the community. So Mike Ellenbeck, an elder from Witsat, passed away in the last few days, also known as Killisette. And there are opportunities for people to honor by memorial kind of tomorrow and a funeral the day after. But for some will remember around the table, she was key, member in the Shared Histories project. She contributed to the research as part of the interviews and certainly a champion for the shared history. Some will remember the Walk to Witsut and the feast and the book, and many people are deeply saddened by the passing of Vi. She's a senior, so she did have a long life. However, she was still vital and important in the community. So I just wanted to express condolences to those who are deeply affected and will be mourning her and offer our best to those people. So thank you for that. And we're going to go on to the staff reports. So first up, I have 14.1. We catch up. We have a report from Mr. Wallace on gifts and issuance of the tax receipts and a recommendation there on updating policy. So council, there's questions of clarity to Mr. Wallace. Otherwise, we have the recommendation. All right. Thank you. Councilor Raven moves the recommendation. Councilor Ray seconds. Any discussion? Vote, all in favor. And that's carried unanimously. We have another report from Mr. Wallace, 14.2, with a recommendation there as well for an updated policy. This one's probably a bit more complex. I'll look to the table first. We can put the recommendation on, or if people have questions for Mr. Wallace, discussion points. Councilor Raven.
I just have some questions. So on the spreadsheet, it mentions the Railway Avenue, sorry, location, and that it's property taxes are a yes, and the same with the old, not the old church. Yeah, sorry, so yeah, I'll just stick with the Railway Avenue because I was just a bit confused because I was under the understanding that with the previous permissive tax exemption, there's gonna be no changes to that till 2025. So I was just curious why it was in the spreadsheet for now.
Mr. Wallace.
Through Mayor Actual, yes, this sheet, using the first item up there, Railway Avenue, property tax column, yes, what that's saying is that the lease says the tenant should pay property taxes. And then as we swing across the top to the right, they were granted a permissive tax exemption, which had a value in 2022 of $4,634. So lease says yes to taxes, and PGE setup says no, forget that. Thank you.
And just a bit more on that, so we do have still some leases in place. And if I'm understanding correctly, Mr. Wallace can correct me, we're kind of gonna deal with them as the leases come up.
Mayor Actual, that's a very important point with these changes, that with all these leased properties, we'll have to go to the expiry date before a review of the terms of the lease, how that integrates or not with a property tax exemption, and what role the grant and aid, the annual grant and aid that organization might be receiving, what might happen there. For example, it might go up.
Thanks, Mr. Wallace. One other piece, I did have a chance to go through this with Mr. Wallace, I think it was yesterday. So looking at the policy itself, so the new policy, FIN 025. And I'm on page 58 of 127 or page 2 of the policy. Down at the bottom where we're talking about nonprofit organizations, one that Mr. Wallace brought to my attention that we may want to consider is the collaborative learning association or center, in that they are an education society. So all other organizations who are delivering education in the community are enabled to have statutory permissive tax exemptions. So that might be one that we want to think about, asking Mr. Wallace to insert it there and provide the information on it. Mr. Wallace.
Yes, Mayor Actual, I mentioned in the staff cover report for the policy that the one letter received back after council's final decision on changes to the permissive tax exemption program was from Collaborative Learning. And essentially, it was just a simple letter saying, yes, we do confirm that based on our budget, having to pay 12,000 in property taxes just isn't going to work with the 50 families we serve. So that note is brought forward, and the suggestion as to why council might amend this policy so that there would be a 2D little 6 is based on the following logic. So first of all, the school district, the Ministry of Education, provincial, statutory exemption, no tax is on their facilities. Statutory exemption also includes all private schools. However, the definition of private schools, at least today, doesn't extend as far as collaborative learning organizations, groups that don't meet all the requirements of the private school definition. However, they are subject to a council's agreement, a group that could be given a permissive tax exemption. And that is the logic there. The logic is, well, perhaps they should be this particular organization should be being treated like one of the community's private schools. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Wallace. Councilor.
Just speaking to that part, I kind of feel if the province felt that was met their criteria that they would extend, and the whole point of this is to stop making these kind of decisions. If the province doesn't feel that the education provided in that fits, then we shouldn't be stepping in and providing that. And then I was just had a question about the last little bit, the impacts of real estate. Was just wondering if that, we kind of talked about maybe supporting some groups such as the hospital auxiliary or something kind of phase in. Does this, the way I read it, does it preclude anybody from asking? Because I think the intent was that only people already receiving permissive tax exemptions could ask for them, ask for help. So I just wanted to clarify it, whether that was the case.
Mr. Wallace.
Through Mayor Attrell, yes, under the revised policy, you will see under number 3, annual external organization funding from town. 3C, other specific organizations not in town RDBN cost sharing arrangements. So currently, the only specific organization eligible to receive annual operating funding from the town outside of town RDBN cost sharing agreements is the RCMP Auxiliary. If additional specific organizations were added to this category, they would be subject to the same criteria as the Auxiliary. And sorry, I can't find it right now, but in here, it basically says that any organization that wants to become a specific organization, meaning it's going to get an annual grant, can come to council at any time as a delegation, explain who they are, what it is they do, what they're looking for. And council at that time can choose under this policy to have them added to the specific organizations list. So for example, returning to collaborative learning. If council's view is that no, collaborative learning should not be extended a property tax exemption beyond 2024, and they're an organization that has informed council that, well, they need financial aid. If that's the case, then they would, their mechanism here to approach council is to come as a delegation and essentially ask to get listed as a specific organization and get a grant of 12,000 a year. Thank you.
Shutting that off. Yeah, no, what I meant was if there was a brand new organization, can they now still come to us? Because I think the intent was we were not going to give any unless they were already getting them, and then they could come to us and ask for help if they wanted.
Mr. Wallace.
Mayor, actually, I need a clarification. Are you talking about permissive tax exemptions, or are we just talking about any organization that doesn't have any support that comes to the town and is looking for support for the first time.
My guess it'd be either or, but Councilor Ray, are you referring to PTVs?
Well, I was kind of going from the impacts of real estate and or PTV changes. So that was kind of what I was asking, because I think our intent was that we wouldn't be looking at new PTEs or grants to people in lieu of a PTE unless they'd already been receiving one and were having difficulty.
I think Councilor Ray, in some ways, that would be an answer of the council of the day. That, you know, we have a policy. I think one way is through a grant application. Previous councils, and you'll remember this better than I do, we're trying to get away from the big grant aid request that used to come annually. But really nothing would prevent anyone from coming to the council and saying, we're looking for assistance, would you consider providing it? Even with a policy, council can waive policy, so I can't see that anything would ever preclude someone from asking the policy to provide us guidance on how we might come to an answer, positive or negative. Like that's kind of my interpretation of policy, that at the end of the day, it's our policy. We can amend policy, we can waive policy. So if we were truly compelled by a new organization, we would find a way to support them if the people sitting at the table felt that was the right direction. Councilor Ray, and Mr. Lewis.
But my concern is we've replaced the PTEs, we're just gonna have people coming to us and we're gonna end up with the grant and aid thing again. And that was not the intent of canceling PTEs. And I think we can have a policy and we can always amend them, but if the policy isn't. If the policy doesn't at least discourage it, then we're just gonna end up with people coming, organizations coming. And that's always been the problem with the PTE and grant and aid, is it's very hard to say no to somebody that's doing good. And we end up in the situation where we're supporting to the tune of $350,000, and I would just like to prevent that from happening again. Otherwise, there was no point in changing in my.
Well, I think part of it would be the, you know, the opinion of those sitting at the table, whether or not they were compelled. I don't think we are actually in a position where we can bind the decisions of future councils. We can have the best advice through policy. But if in 5 years, the people sitting at the table don't like this policy, they're going to be able to change it. Mr. Wallace, I'm not sure if you had something you wanted to add.
Yes, Mayor Ashel, well, on page 5 of this policy. And it is under the header of number 3, annual external or organization funding from town. So we're talking grants here. A is Smithers Public Library. B is other specific organizations of town RDBM cost sharing arrangements. That's existing. C, we've just covered other specific organizations not in town RDBM cost sharing arrangements. And in fact, this is correct as written. It opens the door for new organizations to come. They would have to start it in the standard way of approaching council on any matter like this, come in a delegation. Then turning to D, impacts of real estate and or PT changes on organizations grant funded by town. Both D and C, as part of the public process, changing the PTE exemption, were in response to public comments in person and in writing. That if the program has been changed significantly, then under D for somebody who's originally benefiting, that there would be at least some consideration as to whether they should get a bigger grant or not. That was why that's here. And C was just, well, what if somebody has never had any, you know, they're not a specific organization and they do want the right to at least be heard, to have a grant. How would they go about approaching council? And again, that was part of that process. And this is the way it's being drafted in this policy to accommodate that. But I would note it's quite restrictive. I mean, if you're a specific organization, you have to be a delegation, you're on your own. Council may not choose to respond to your presentation whatsoever. So you may never become a specific organization. And on part D, the impacts of real estate and PT changes on organizations grant funded by the town, which, to keep it simple, are a couple of arts and culture organizations. There's no commitment made here to actually do anything other than to consider issues that are raised. And the only time those issues are going to get raised is when a real estate lease comes up. And then they will be considered in terms of, okay, what's in the lease? Well, first of all, what is this property doing? What are you doing with it? Because it's not the same across these organizations. Then after the real estate terms are being considered, then it becomes pretty clear whether or not there should be any continuance with a permissive tax exemption. And then finally, if out of all of that, it's learned, okay, there really needs to be a change on a grant, that would be the time to do it. That organization's lease or the staff recommendations for a change come to council for that organization, and council one by one, and only occasionally because the leases are quite spread out with their expiry dates, would consider how things are and how are things in the general environment and how it may or may not want to execute the policy. The policy here is a framework, but it doesn't actually specify what anyone must or must not do. It's just a framework. And that is also a response to council as a whole of, it's very difficult to work if the real estate and the permissive tax exemptions and the grants are all split up and looked after in different spots. How do we really know how we're looking after these organizations? I hope that helps.
Thanks, Mr. Wallace. Okay, anyone else? The only other thing I'll note, doesn't really have to do with the policy, but it has to do with the work, is just the dates on the leases. So we all know that the Creation Station is behind, and we see the old church coming up just in terms of dates. So we're going to have a run at this pretty quick. Okay. So there is the recommendation. There's more questions or comments. Once Councilor Patterson moves the recommendation, is there a seconder? Councilor Raven seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? And that is carried unanimously. Okay. Thanks, folks. Thanks, Mr. Wallace. Okay, 14.3, we have a report from Mr. Herzog, UBCM Community Emergency Preparedness Emergency Support Services Grant with a recommendation. Councilor Raven moves the recommendation, and is there a seconder? Councilor Beekman. Anything that you wanted to add, Mr. Herzog, and then I'll go to Councilor Raven.
I guess one thing I need to thank you, your worship. One thing I have to add is that I did make a small mistake on that staff report. I forgot to add in that we're also looking to purchase a new tent to replace our old tent. The old one's an old army tent. This one's an inflatable one. It'd be easier for volunteers. So I made a mistake. I forgot to add that in there. Sorry.
Okay, Councilor Raven.
Sorry, it doesn't really matter. I was just wondering if there's an actual amount attached to this.
Mr. Herzog.
Thank you, Councilor Ray through the mayor. The total is $60,000 for the grant.
Any other questions? I just have one, and if you could just remind me in this joint service between us and the village, how that works and how it's sort of managed.
The question, your worship, yes. So right now, Smithers and Southwest shares the emergency support services program through the team management and through the director position. This grant is a joint 50-50 between Smithers and Talbot. Smithers can receive a maximum of 30,000. Talbot can apply for a maximum of 30,000. So you put those two together to create 60. And then the town of Smithers manages that grant on behalf of the village for purchasing. And then when the reimbursement comes through from UBCM, it's then split. So then the village level pays back Smithers for the management of that project.
Thank you. Okay, we're ready. All in favor? Any opposed? And that's carried. Thank you. And 14.4, report from Mr. Herzog, UBCM another thing, Emergency Operations Center 2024 grant application. They're all complicated long titles. It's a lot of syllables. With a recommendation, if someone wants to put it on the floor, Councillor Patterson moves, seconder Councillor Ray. Anything that you want to add, Mr. Russo? Okay. Any discussion on this one? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? And that's carried unanimously. And we're at 14.4. Mr. Herzog, another grant application, if I'm reading this properly? No? Sorry, where am I at? 14.5. I missed it. Okay. Good frown, though. Confused. A report from Ms. Berriman, in reference to the item that, Clayton spoke up earlier. So we have a recommendation for a letter of support, and we heard, the request at the beginning of the meeting to participate as an active member. So,
Your worship, can we just pause for a sec?
yes. Oh, it all went down.
Slightly just something.
We're just paused for technical again.
Thank you, Ken.
Yeah, we just we lost Councillor Raven. I think we'll just wait by my son. So we're at 14.5, report from Ms. Merriman and Mr. George. Were you only getting my attention on the technical, or did you have something you wanted to say?
I'm good.
The technical. Okay, so we have the recommendation, and then just repeating that the request was also for an active member. Councillor Patterson.
I'll move the staff recommendation portion.
Or the staff, the recommendation.
Okay, and the recommendation is for the letter of support. Is there a seconder? Councillor Elliott seconds. Any discussion? So, Councillor Ray, go ahead.
I just wanted to, I was a little surprised that it was gonna be an active involvement and just want to make sure that. You know, council's involved in some things that don't require any staff time. And I was just wondering, you know, if this would just require the time of one counselor, or if it would be something staff would be involved in.
I see there's a reference to staff, but Mr. George.
Through your worship, Councillor Ray, this would fall under the current staff responsibilities for economic development for recruitment and retention. We have a recruitment and retention roundtable with partners, so I wouldn't see this as adding additional time required within those responsibilities. It would fall under the day-to-day staff who are participating on this.
Thanks, I just wanted to make sure it wasn't gonna require a recording secretary and everything like that. It's an awesome idea, so I'll support it.
Okay, anyone else? Alrighty, all in favor? Any opposed? And that's carried unanimous. Okay, we are up to 15.1, the municipal markers. Any comments or questions for staff? Councilor Raven.
I just wanted to comment on our firefighter hours, so you can see the breakdown over the year there. And I just wanted to remind everybody that there is an active recruitment happening. They're looking for new members, so maybe with the new year, if anyone has some New Year's resolutions to go out, get some new skills and get more involved in their community, this is a good opportunity. But I also wanted to remind the need that is required and that we are really lucky to have such skilled volunteers. I know we all are aware of the incident that happened on New Year's Eve and our crews did respond to that. So it's one of those tragic situations that you never hope repeat, but I know I take comfort in the fact that there are people on nights like New Year's Eve where when their radio goes off, they show up. So heartfelt thanks to everybody that showed up, but also something for everyone to think about is that this is something we all count on. So we just want to make sure that we have people there.
Thanks.
It should have come.
Thanks, Councilor Raven. Okay. Any other comments on municipal markers? All right, I'm moving on to 16.1 then. So this is the recommendation for first and second reading for the rezoning for the 3 properties next door to us here at Town Hall for the purposes of supportive housing. So can I just get someone to move the first reading? We'll get it on the floor. Councillor Bukama and Councillor Ray. No discussion on first reading. All in favor? Opposed, and that's carried. Second reading. Councillor Patterson, Councillor Raven. Okay, the motion's on the floor. Discussion. Good. It's pretty quiet. I'll just say I've said it earlier when BC Housing was here. I'm grateful that they continue to pursue a way to provide a project. There was also a plan for good public engagement. And then we'll be able to hear both from the entity and from people in the community what their thoughts are. So we'll try to share the information as best we can once we have it for the public consultation. That's right.
I just had a question. It's actually pretty much the last sentence of the report. Just providing BC Housing with sufficient time to provide an engagement summary report to be included on the public hearing agenda. Is there any way of us making that a requirement to move to the public hearing? I just know last time we moved to the public hearing without any kind of summary or answers given to the community for their questions put to BC Housing, and I want to make sure that doesn't happen again.
Mr. Allen.
Thank you, Mayor Mitchell, to Councillor Ray. BC Housing is proposing or planning a virtual session on February 1st and then a in-person open house session on Monday, February 5th at the Smithers Legion. And yes, I think that's what staff are referring to, and that will give adequate time to have the summaries from those engagement sessions on the February 13th public hearing agenda.
Yeah, so I just kind of wanted to say that, you know, that was a disappointment last time, and also in BC Housing's defense, I hope the public behaves better than they did at the last community engagement. If anybody's listening out there, it's your opportunity to ask questions, and hopefully we can hold BC Housing to give answers. It's not an opportunity to argue with BC Housing or to yell at them. It's an opportunity to ask questions, and the way people are going to get the most out of it is to ask respectful questions and engage in respectful dialogue. So I hope that happens this time.
Thanks, Councillor Ray. Anyone else? Okay, we'll call the vote. All in favor? Any opposed? And that carries unanimously. Okay. And then we're up to correspondence, the B correspondence, if there's anything there people want to pull out. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Worship. It doesn't have a number on it, but I'll just say it's the very last page around the invasive species.
Okay, yeah, I see a number there. I've got 18.5 invasive species council.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, that's fine. We've got that one. Any others? Sure, 18.1. I'm not sure what. It's confused, but we've got 18.1. Anything else? Okay, Let's just start with 18-1. You can see the letter that was received. I'm sure you've all seen it. I don't know much about this school. There is a request there. I don't know, what's people's thoughts, or is anyone familiar with this school, this university? Okay, I think then, we'll just pass it by. I think we've got sort of on our plate work between, Coos Mountain College and UNBC. And if something becomes obvious in the future, we can always reach out. Okay, I'm gonna jump then to 18-5, Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I might look to Mr. Poole as well. I thought I'd just make a quick comment. It felt a bit appropriate. I guess it's a bit of story time. I was driving a number of weeks ago with my 4 nieces in the back of my car. And we were crossing over the Smithers Bridge, and they said to me, "Oh, Auntie, did you know that there's rabbits that live at this particular property?" So that's the old Har Flora Golf Course. And of course, I've driven past it 1,000 times and never noticed, which I thought was kind of astute of them. And since I'd passed that property before winter fell, I was a bit shocked to see that just from my initial glance, what appeared to be hundreds of rabbits, which I'm probably over exaggerating. But I did have a conversation with Mr. Poole, so I just wanted to keep council advised of that, to try to understand that although my understanding is it's outside of town limits, something that I'm concerned about, and maybe this particular organization can help us navigate it, is that should they cross over into the town of Smithers, it makes me think about my experience when I was living in Victoria, and how that issue became quite prevalent when it wasn't dealt with immediately. In particular, I think of the town-owned property just adjacent of the bridge, and just how destructive those particular species can be and how quickly they can multiply. So I just want to say I'm just working with Mr. Poole to figure out the next steps. I don't know if you have any further questions, but I just thought this triggered me to mention that to council today. Sure.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to council, Councillor Patterson and I have had this discussion. I did talk with the conservation officers, and I did mention that it's private property. And of course, they're domestic rabbits, and they didn't seem to be as concerned because I talked to them about the situations with Victoria, especially at UVic. Because they're not, I believe it's the snowshoe hare type, that they tend to not to be able to survive as long as they would in Victoria, where they really don't have the predators. They've had the odd call on that property, but at this point, they haven't had them actually concerns about them leaving. And I believe there's one other area, that might have been an area that you had mentioned in the rural areas that has the same thing, but because they're on private property, they don't have jurisdiction on that site. But I just want to echo Councillor Patterson's concern, is it or is it not? Could it become an epidemic? But according to the conservation officers, they don't see that.
Thanks, Mr. Poole. Thanks, Councillor Patterson, for raising it. And I guess probably the only other place where we could share the information would be with Director Stoltenberg. But I think the information that Mr. Poole provided is probably important, whether it's Area A or the town. But thanks for bringing it to our attention. Anything else on that? Councillor Patterson, you're good?
No.
Okay. Okay, then, if I'm following the numbers properly, we are at 19.2, and we have the report from Mr. Herzog on a temporary emergency warming center to be held across the road. Mr. Herzog, do you want to give us a little update on where we are?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, just as a quick background, we're looking at putting the emergency warning center across the street due to the yellow weather warning issued by Environment Climate Change Canada for the duration of that event. The latest update is just within the last half hour, we've been approved by EMBC or EMCR for the finances required to set the tent up across the street. So as of right now, we're full go. We're approved, full start construction tomorrow on the tent. The electrician, BC Hydro will also be in tomorrow to fill the power. And we also have some signage that's been approved for the tent also. So again, it'll be open until the yellow warning is lifted, and then the tent will come back.
Thanks, Mr. Herzog. I have one question of clarification. So in the recommendation, it says the parking lot, is it the parking lot or on the grassy area?
The parking lot, your worship. Right next to the encampment, so we'll be requesting to close off that one part, half of the parking lane. Next to the encampment and away from the library, just because it's a much easier space to, the tent's being built on a skid. So it has a floor, it'll be much easier to be able to drop it right there and then pick it up again after.
And probably it's already been discussed, but it's only occurring to me now, is that thinking about the parking lot, just in terms of snow removal and snow dump. Mr. Lawrence or Mr. Herzog?
We will need to speak with Director Lawrence.
Okay, so that's still a work in progress? Okay. Alrighty, lots of hands, I'm sure lots of interest. I'll just say as a preamble, I appreciate the effort. The temperature is getting cold. And we haven't gotten through this very well in the last couple of years. And so to the agencies that have been working together to figure out a way through, we're hearing from Mr. Herzog here, but there's other people that are involved in the community that are wrapping themselves around this, trying to figure out what can be done over the next few days to keep people alive in view of the cold temperatures. So thank you for that. Okay, and I missed whose hand went up first, so I think maybe I'm just gonna go around the table. So I'm gonna start with Councillor Ray, and if you want to speak, we're just go around.
Well, first of all, I'll support, but my continued response and support is going to depend on how this one goes. I have a lot of concern that a lot of the negative activities that we see at the homeless encampment are going to be made easier by providing this warning. And so I'm not a monster. I don't want people to freeze to death, but I think we're kidding ourselves if we think it's just going to be used for warming. It's going to be a place for all the kind of activities that we're already seeing there. So I'm hoping that it's used and not abused. I do have a little bit of a concern about it going in the library parking lot, and I appreciate how quickly it was put together. And I believe the library was consulted, so that's good to know. But it is a service that we provide to the public, and now there's no parking. Not only for the public, but also for the staff. So I realize this is temporary and an emergency. So again, thanks to the staff for the work, but my continued support will be very contingent on how things go over there. And I think the other thing that council needs to get on people, I've mentioned this before at council numerous times, is that as soon as it gets to be spring, everybody forgets that this is going to be a concern again. And so our staff and the OC is scrambling every year because nobody that should be taking care of it is taking care of it. And the more I think about it, I think this is something that we need to go directly to the premier with, because it doesn't seem to be anybody's responsibility. And so it's an emergency every year. We need to go to the premier and say, you know, we're not the only community that has freezing temperatures. And I think every community that has freezing temperatures ends up scrambling around every time there's cold weather. And that's not a good way to do things. But not having anybody to go to, I actually think it may be something directly to the premier. And maybe we can't wait till UBCM, because then it's already too late. It's September. So we've just been very lucky this year that it hasn't been cold until now. So I just wanted to put that in everybody's head. Maybe there'll be a motion later, but I think that's all my thoughts.
Thanks, Councillor Ray. Councillor Patterson, if you wish.
Thank you, Bishop. I will agree with what Councillor Ray has said. I will support this, but absolutely, obviously looking for more long-term solutions, and I'm hopeful and looking forward to some of the conversation Potentially would be some possible comment to say that this wouldn't help to support this winter, but yeah, just looking forward to see what comes from that. I also agree with letters to the province. I think that's important, in particular around potential cost sharing in the interim. And I have two questions. One, I'm thinking about individuals who, with the rising cost of living, you know, maybe aren't potentially able to heat their homes this year. So, you know, some people might just say, well, it's only going to be for those individuals at the encampment. So I guess that's just a question on, is it going to be exclusive of who can use the shelter and how many people can we fit? Thank you. Mr. Rizal.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson, through the mayor. I will have to get back on the actual occupancy rating of the tent. It's something I definitely will look a little bit. It will not be exclusive to the encampment. It'll be open to the public. So anyone that's wishing to go in, the rules will be posted. There will be some obviously rules, and they'll be posted on the outside on some sandwich boards to try to let people know what the rules are going to be inside. And again, it'll be checked by our CMP and other service groups.
And last question, it was a great comment by Councillor Ram around accessibility. So thinking about parking to the library. And I was curious if as part of the accessibility plan, is there current parking stall outside of the library for folks who have accessibility needs, specific ones?
Mr. Allen, with your call.
I'm not too sure about that. I think there was one designated spot, but I'm not sure if it's found on site.
Just something for consideration. Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Rizal.
Sorry, there is one handicap parking on that far corner, which will be still open and available.
Thank you. Councillor Buchan, if you wish.
Thanks, very much. Just one quick question. Is the intention that the weather warms up, the tent comes down, we get a cold snap again, the tent goes back up? Okay, so we could have it go up and down numerous times between now and the end of March.
That is correct, Councillor.
Thank you.
Chief Dixon.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. And just to add to that a little bit, part of this process that we've been working through is the foundational elements for our cold weather plan, if you will. And part of that is the trigger points of when what temperatures we decide are critical to opening these warming centers. So as part of us moving forward, we'll be looking at our warming plan to determine those trigger points and through our discussions with EMBC or EMCR today, if we were to say set a 0-degree trigger point, theoretically the tent could stay up for as long as the temperature hovered around 0. So we'll have some ability to sort of look at the longer term impacts of taking it up and putting it down, taking it up and putting it down, and with the hope that it won't become an onerous exercise.
Thank you. Thanks, Mayor.
I'll hop in near the end. So Councillor Reagan.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to thank staff for their ability to pivot and get this going so quickly. I know it's last minute. I also appreciate the collaboration with the community groups, and I definitely want to echo what Councillor Ray said as well. Winter comes every single year. I've lived in this valley basically my entire life, and it's always coming. I would also like to recognize that this is something that has come up at this table year round. I remember even in a July meeting where we were talking about winter coming. So we'll just continue our advocacy, and I definitely support bringing it to a letter to the Premier.
Thanks, Councillor Reagan. Councillor Allen.
I'm not going to repeat everyone. I support what they are saying and I support the tent being placed, and thank you for the work and getting it organized. And I know it's really hard to get things going, and we do care about people freezing to death and being cold, so I appreciate that. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Leonard. Councillor Leonard.
I will also spare everybody the comments being repeated. I will also support it, mainly due to its temporary nature. And we can debate that maybe at the next conversation and what to do over there.
Thanks, Councillor Leonard. So a couple of things I just wanted to reiterate. because there was a reference to provincial support, so this is being done under a provincial task number. So the funding for this is coming out from outside the town of Smithers. There, I'm gonna say this because I've forgotten 3 times already tonight. There is external to this an intention to invite the housing minister to Smithers. So it might be that this is the opportunity we use to send a letter to Minister Cowan inviting him to come to Smithers. Our MLA is intending to do that outreach already for another reason. So we could extend the letter to Mr. Cowan for a couple of reasons. One relates to the issue that we just dealt with, which is the BC Housing Project, to come and see what's going on here. So just to extend that invitation. So that's one thing if we're talking about letters. I'm certainly not opposed sending something to the premier, who used to be the housing minister, as we all know. In terms of whose responsibility it is, I think as I see decisions made across the country, as much as I would love to say this is completely someone else's responsibility, that's not really the way things are rolling right now. Municipalities, I think, do have a role to play. What that is, I don't really know the extent of it, but I do favor a follow-up conversation to think about what is it that as a community we think we want, that we need, and how are we going to pursue that in the future? I don't know how many times I said last March in communications with people, winter is just about over and winter is almost here. So I get that. And we haven't been successful. So I do appreciate the extraordinary efforts that people come to deal with the emergency problem that we're gonna have tomorrow when the temperature drops. That's one piece. I think we need to help drive the conversation on what you fill in the blanks for the words, because they change: emergency shelter, 24-hour shelter, those things that we need on an ongoing basis. That will follow up conversation, but I agree, we need to pick it up. Nobody's gonna drive it for us. If someone else was driving it, the problem would be solved. So I think it behooves us to think it through and bring it back for ourselves to talk about, whether it's a committee of the whole or, if we're successful in inviting the housing minister here to have that conversation separately. So I absolutely agree. But for this, being able to deal with the temporary emergency warming center, I think this is something that we can support. I would be very interested in knowing the temperature. I also would be very concerned about setting it up permanently for the winter. I'm more in favor of, I don't know what that temperature, that yellow warning is, but having a sense that this is temporary, so that we don't create a sense of ownership on more land over there, that we need to be able to deal with that going forward. So we may want to create a permanent location, but I think that's a discussion that has to happen at the table versus it happening de facto. So, Chief Dixon.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, just to speak to that a little bit, part of our discussions with EMCR today, we're looking at gathering some data from other communities that have done their extreme cold plans and starting to look at some of what those trigger points are for exactly those reasons.
Thank you. Okay, any final comments? Councilor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Apologies, just one quick question. So, I hear what you're saying. That was a great reminder around the funding coming from the province. So just to clarify, when it says under the discussion, we received up to a maximum of $6,000. That's from the province.
That's true.
So second question is a follow-up. Are we going to be tracking, sorry if this is a silly question, are we going to be tracking expenses including staff time?
Thank you, Councillor Patterson, through the mayor. Yes, at the time I wrote the staff report, we were at 6,000. We've now been approved for 12,500. So with the setup of the 10% towards and the power to go in and BC Hydro, we're at 12,500 fully approved. We are tracking all this. It's been sent to finance already. And then the staff hours are also being tracked under the Emergency Operations Center. And that's also submitted to the province. So any staff hours outside of regular staff hours is reimbursed by the province as well.
Excellent, thank you.
Thanks, Councilor Patterson. Councilor Buchanan.
I'll move the staff recommendation.
Thank you. Seconder, Councilor Raven seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Let's deal with the, I would like us to consider, inviting Minister Callon to come and visit in a timely way. And we could reference, all the ongoing housing needs, but in particular, the public consultation attached to the supported housing, and offer thanks to, the minister who's responsible for BC Housing as well. So I'm happy to move that we invite Minister Callon to visit Smithers and suggest those times in early to mid-February would be appropriate if someone's willing to second. Councilor Patterson seconds. Any further comment or suggestion? All in favor? Any opposed? And that's carried. And Councilor Ray, you were talking about the premier. Did you want us to write a separate letter, excuse me, to the premier as well?
I can't come up with proper wording, but I think depending on the response from Minister Kahlon, it's just been my experience that everybody seems to pass the buck when it comes to the cold weather shelter. And if that's what we get from the Minister of Housing, then we do need to follow up with a letter to the premier.
Okay, so we'll see what the responses that we got from the minister first. All right. Have we covered everything? This is the moment when I was feel, okay, I have one last thing, because I always have one last thing. This is going to be the last meeting for our interim CEO. Mr. We'll look at him rolling his eyes. Making faces at me tonight, that's what I've noticed. Mr. Poole came in and assisted as our interim CEO when Ms. Booth left. And I think I can say what I noticed when he accepted, is that council became calm and that staff on balance became calm. And that what I've seen since you've arrived is the calm has remained, that people appreciate the experience and the quality of leadership that you brought into the building. And we are very grateful for that, brought us through and actually led the recruitment process for us as well. And we'll be welcoming our new CAO, Mr. Door, next week. And just wanted to express our gratitude for the work that you've done and the leadership. And it's really been a great experience. So thank you very much. Okay. Alrighty, I think we're ready for that motion. Motion to adjourn by Councilor Raven, seconder, Councilor Elliott. All in favor? And we are adjourned. Thanks, everyone.